At 38 years old, Marcus Hill, an HVAC technician earning a steady but modest $61,000 a year, stood in the gleaming, sterile corridor of the University of Pennsylvania Hospital's most exclusive surgical wing. The air itself smelled expensive, a crisp, antiseptic scent that failed to mask the underlying aroma of wealth and privilege. In his hand, he held a standard-issue hospital clipboard. The form clipped to it, however, was anything but standard. It was the final guarantor agreement. On the line for financial responsibility, his signature was firm and clear. He had just facilitated the transfer of $84,500, a sum that represented every penny of his savings, and a personal loan so large it felt like a physical weight on his chest. It was the full, uncovered cost of his mother-in-law's complex spinal surgery. Through the large glass window of the private room, a room that looked more like a suite at the Four Seasons, complete with a $300 bouquet of lilies on the windowsill, he saw them. His wife Tiana, and her mother, Yvonne. Yvonne was propped up in the high-tech hospital bed, her silver hair perfectly coiffed even in recovery. Tiana was perched on the edge of a plush visitor's chair, laughing at something her mother had said. Two young nurses, their faces bright and attentive, were tending to Yvonne, checking her vitals on a monitor that glowed with calm, green lines. Marcus felt a small, hesitant smile touch his own lips. It was over. The weeks of stress, the tense financial negotiations, the frightening reality of the surgery itself. Yvonne was safe. Tiana was happy. He had done it. He had shouldered the burden because, as Tiana had reminded him countless times, it's what a husband does. It's what family does. He pushed the door open gently, the soft whoosh of the hydraulic closer announcing his arrival. The two nurses looked up and smiled politely. Tiana glanced over her shoulder, her expression unchanged before turning back to her mother. Yvonne's eyes met his for a fraction of a second. There was no warmth, no gratitude. Just a flicker of something that looked like annoyance before her gaze shifted to the nurse on her right. "Everything looks wonderful, Mrs. Morris," the nurse said cheerfully. "You have a wonderful family here to support you. Your daughter has been here all morning, and your son-in-law, too." Yvonne gave a delicate, dismissive wave of her hand, a gesture Marcus had seen 1,000 times. It was the same gesture she used to wave away a waiter or a fly. "Oh, Tiana is a treasure," Yvonne said, her voice smooth as silk. Then she nodded her head almost imperceptibly in Marcus's direction. Her next words were not whispered. They were spoken in a clear, conversational tone, meant for the nurses, for the room, for the world to hear. Him? Oh, he's nobody. He's just the man who pays the bills. The air in the room didn't just go silent, it seemed to solidify, to press in on Marcus from all sides. The cheerful chatter of the nurses died in their throats. They exchanged a brief, mortified glance. Tiana, to her eternal shame, did nothing. She didn't correct her mother. She didn't defend her husband. She simply picked at a loose thread on her $1,800 Louis Vuitton handbag, suddenly fascinated by its construction. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway. The clipboard in his hand felt impossibly heavy, its edges sharp against his trembling fingers. He looked down at the paper. The black ink of his name, Marcus Hill, seemed to mock him. Beside it, in the box labeled Relationship to Patient, he had written Son-in-law, and below that, the section detailing the financial arrangement, the transfer of a life-altering sum of money from his account to the hospital's. The money was his, the debt was his, the signature was his. He was the guarantor, he was the provider, he was the one who had made all of this possible, and he was nobody. The word echoed in the sudden vast emptiness that had opened up inside him. Nobody. A tool. An ATM. A faceless functionary whose only role was to sign checks. The love he thought he was demonstrating, the sacrifice he thought he was making for his family, was nothing more than a transaction. And in their eyes, it didn't even grant him a name. He looked up from the clipboard. He saw Yvonne, preening under the nurse's sudden, uncomfortable attention. He saw Tiana, refusing to meet his eyes. He saw the truth of his marriage, of his role in this family, laid bare under the harsh, unforgiving fluorescent lights of a hospital that he had paid for. And in that moment of crushing clarity, Marcus Hill made a decision. He didn't say a word. He didn't cause a scene. He simply turned his back on the suite, on his wife, on the woman whose life he had just secured, and he walked away. He left the clipboard on an empty chair in the hallway, a silent testament to a contract that had just been broken, not by law, but by a single cruel, devastating word. Have you ever given your all to someone only to be made to feel completely invisible? Let us know in the comments if you've ever experienced a moment that changed everything for you. The foundation of this betrayal wasn't laid in the sterile hallway of a hospital. It was built slowly, brick by brick, in the cozy confines of their modest, $180,000 row home in South Philadelphia. For 7 years, Marcus had believed he was building a life with Tiana. He now saw he was merely funding a lifestyle. The facade of their domestic normalcy was propped up by his steady, blue-collar income and his willingness to remain quiet. He remembered a dinner almost 2 years prior, on their 5th anniversary. He had saved for 3 months to take Tiana to Vernick Fish, a high-end seafood restaurant where a single entree cost more than his daily wages. He wore his best suit, a simple gray $400 affair from Men's Warehouse that he kept for weddings and funerals. Tiana had arrived at the table wearing a new shimmering black dress, a $1,200 piece from a boutique on Walnut Street. She looked stunning, her deep brown skin radiant against the dark fabric, her long hair styled in a flawless silk press. "You look beautiful," he had said, his voice thick with genuine admiration. "Thank you, baby," she'd replied, her eyes scanning the restaurant, taking in the well-heeled clientele. "It's nice to be out of that dusty old house for a night." The comment was a small jab, but it landed. He loved their house. He had personally replaced the subflooring in the kitchen and reglazed the windows in the living room. His tools, a collection worth over $5,000 that he had amassed over 15 years, were neatly organized in the basement. The house was a testament to his hard work, to his hands. To her, it was just dusty and old. Later that evening, as they discussed their days, he talked about a particularly challenging installation he had completed at a commercial property downtown. He was proud of the work, the intricate ductwork he had designed to fit a difficult space. Tiana had sighed, swirling the $18 glass of Sauvignon Blanc in her hand. "I just don't know how you do it, Marcus. All that crawling around in ceilings and basements, it's such dirty work." She hadn't said it with malice, but with a kind of detached pity, as if he were a character in a documentary about the working poor. Her mother, Yvonne, was even less subtle. Yvonne lived in a spacious, modern condo in Center City, paid for by a generous divorce settlement from 2 decades ago. She treated Marcus's profession as a curious, slightly embarrassing affliction. Whenever they visited, she would make a point of it. "Marcus, dear, do be a doll and take a look at the air conditioning unit, would you? It's making a funny noise." It was never a request. It was an expectation. He was the help, even on his days off. He would spend an hour of his Sunday afternoon, dressed in his casual clothes, diagnosing a problem that a simple filter change could fix, while Tiana and Yvonne drank mimosas on the balcony overlooking the city. He never billed her. It was family. The pattern was always the same. Their needs, their wants, their comforts were paramount. His were an afterthought. Tiana's wardrobe was a rotating collection of brand names, a $900 Tory Burch tote for work, a pair of $750 Stuart Weitzman boots for the fall. Her car was a leased white BMW 3 Series, a $48,000 vehicle with a monthly payment of $650 that she justified as necessary for her image as a mid-level marketing manager. Marcus, meanwhile, drove a 10-year-old 2014 Ford F-150 with 157,000 miles on the odometer. It was paid off, reliable, and essential for his work. His boots were $120 Red Wings, replaced only when the soles wore through. His idea of a luxury was buying a new, high-end $300 DeWalt power drill. The financial disparity in their personal spending was a quiet, constant hum beneath the surface of their marriage. He managed the household budget, paid the mortgage, the utilities, the groceries. He saw every dollar that went out. He knew that Tiana's salary, though slightly higher than his at $72,000, was almost entirely consumed by her personal expenses and her car. The heavy lifting of their shared life, the mortgage, the savings, the future, was on his shoulders. He accepted it. He thought that was his role. He thought it was love. He had no idea how wrong he was. The true escalation began 6 months before the surgery. It started with Yvonne's complaints of back pain, which quickly progressed to a diagnosis that sounded both complex and terrifying: severe spinal stenosis requiring a multi-level laminectomy. The surgeon, one of the best in the country, was at HUP. The initial consultation alone cost $1,500, which Tiana put on her credit card with a dramatic flourish, as if it were a great sacrifice. The real bomb dropped a week later. The surgeon's office called with the final estimate. After Yvonne's mediocre insurance plan paid its portion, the remaining balance was a staggering $84,500. That night, the atmosphere in their small living room was thick with a manufactured crisis. Yvonne was on speakerphone, her voice trembling. Tiana was pacing back and forth on their $800 West Elm rug, her face a mask of distress. "I don't know what I'm going to do," Yvonne wailed. "They said if I don't have the surgery, I could end up in a wheelchair. I can't live like that, Tiana." "We'll figure it out, Mama," Tiana said, her voice firm, but her eyes were locked on Marcus. Marcus sat on their worn, comfortable $1,000 sofa, a knot tightening in his stomach. He had already run the numbers in his head. Yvonne's condo was worth at least $600,000. She had investments. This wasn't a matter of life and death. It was a matter of lifestyle. And more importantly, it was a matter of who would be inconvenienced. "Your mother has assets, Tiana," Marcus said quietly, trying to be the voice of reason. "She could take out a home equity loan, or liquidate some of her portfolio." Tiana stopped pacing and glared at him, her eyes flashing with anger. "Are you serious? You want my mother, at her age, to go into debt? To risk her home? The home she plans to leave to me?" The last part hung in the air, unspoken, but perfectly clear. Preserving Yvonne's estate was preserving Tiana's inheritance. His finances, however, were apparently fair game. "I'm not saying she should risk her home," Marcus countered, keeping his voice even. "I'm saying she has options. We don't." "What do you mean we don't?" Tiana shot back. "You have savings, don't you? That money you've been putting away for a down payment on a bigger house?" He was stunned. The down payment was their dream, or so he thought. It was for a future family, for a yard, for a life they were supposed to be building together. He had meticulously saved for 5 years, accumulating $22,000. "That's for a house, Tiana. For us," he said, his voice strained. "And it's only $22,000. That's not even close. So take out a loan for the rest," she said, as if it were the most obvious solution in the world. "It's my mother, Marcus. This isn't a new car. This is her ability to walk. I can't believe you're being so selfish." The word selfish hit him like a physical slap. He who worked 60 hours a week, who managed their finances with painstaking care, who had put her desires above his own for years, was being called selfish. Yvonne, still on speakerphone, seized the opportunity. "I never wanted to be a burden," she sniffled, a masterful performance of guilt-tripping. "If it's too much, I'll just learn to live with it." The pressure was immense, a coordinated pincer movement of emotional manipulation. Over the next 2 weeks, it was relentless. Tiana would give him the silent treatment for days, communicating only through sighs and martyred expressions. When she did speak, it was to remind him of his duty. "I took vows, Marcus, in sickness and in health. That extends to my mother. She's my family. She's supposed to be your family, too." Yvonne would call him directly, her voice frail and pleading. "I know it's a lot to ask, Marcus, but you're such a good, strong man. Tiana and I, we count on you so much." It was the most positive reinforcement he'd received from her in 7 years, and it was utterly transparent. The final straw came on a Tuesday night. Marcus came home late, exhausted after a grueling day wrestling with a faulty commercial freezer unit. The house was dark. Tiana was in bed, facing the wall. "Tiana?" he asked softly. "I went to see my mother today," she said, her voice muffled by the pillow. "She was trying to climb the stairs to her bedroom and she fell. She just lay there on the floor and cried, 'Marcus,' because she couldn't get up." "And you're worried about a down payment." He knew with a sickening certainty that it was a lie. A calculated, cruel lie designed to break him. But the image it conjured, whether real or not, did its job. He pictured the proud, imperious Yvonne helpless on the floor. He pictured Tiana's genuine fear for her mother, and he felt his resolve crumble. What was money, really? What was debt? He was a provider. This is what providers did. The next morning he called the bank. He made an appointment. He told Tiana he would do it. Her relief was immediate and total. She hugged him, kissing his cheek with a warmth that had been absent for weeks. "Oh, thank you, baby," she whispered. "You're doing the right thing. You're saving her life." He felt no triumph, no sense of righteous sacrifice. He just felt hollowed out. A few days later, he sat in a sterile cubicle at a TD Bank branch, across from a loan officer who looked barely 25. The man reviewed his application, his $61,000 salary, his excellent credit score, and the staggering amount he was requesting. A $62,500 personal loan. The officer cleared his throat. "Sir, with the interest rate at 9.8%, your monthly payment will be $1,182 for 60 months. Are you aware of that?" "I am," Marcus said, his voice flat. The payment was more than the mortgage on their house. It was nearly a quarter of his take-home pay. It was a financial chain he was voluntarily wrapping around his own neck. He signed the papers, his hand steady despite the roaring in his ears. He transferred his entire $22,000 in savings to his checking account. And when the loan funded the next day, he authorized the full wire transfer of $84,500 to the hospital. The money left his account in a single, silent, digital rush. He felt like he had just sold a piece of his soul. That night, Tiana celebrated by ordering from their favorite expensive Thai restaurant, a $95 indulgence. As they ate him, she scrolled through the Neiman Marcus website on her phone, pointing out a pair of $850 Jimmy Choo heels she wanted. "To wear to Mama's recovery party," she'd said with a bright, unconcerned smile. Marcus looked at his wife, a woman who could so effortlessly plan to spend nearly a month's worth of his new loan payment on a pair of shoes, and he felt a cold, terrifying distance open between them. He was in a different world now, a world of debt and sacrifice that she couldn't or wouldn't, even begin to comprehend. He had bought her mother's health, but he was beginning to suspect he had lost his wife in the transaction. What he didn't know was that he had never really had her at all. The day of the surgery came and went in a blur of anxiety. Marcus sat in the waiting room for 6 hours, nursing a single, cold cup of coffee from the hospital's overpriced cafe, a $6 waste of money. Tiana sat beside him, fielding texts and calls from concerned relatives, her voice a performance of stressed but controlled competence. When the surgeon finally emerged, a tall, confident man with an aura of importance, he announced that the procedure had been a complete success. Yvonne was in recovery. Relief washed over Marcus so intensely it left him weak. It had been worth it. The debt, the stress, the sacrifice. It was all worth it to see the fear drain from Tiana's face, to know that Yvonne was going to be okay. 2 days later, Yvonne was moved to the private recovery wing, the one reserved for patients whose insurance or personal wealth afforded them luxury. It was on the top floor of the Perelman Center for Advanced Medicine, a tower of glass and steel that offered breathtaking views of the city. Marcus had never been in a hospital room like it. It was larger than their own living room, with blonde wood floors, recessed lighting, and a private bathroom with a walk-in shower. A large flat-screen TV was mounted on the wall, and a fully stocked mini-fridge hummed quietly in the corner. A massive, ostentatious fruit basket, which he later learned from a chatty nurse, cost nearly $250, sat on a side table. A gift from one of Yvonne's wealthy friends. This was the scene he walked into at 3:14 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. He had come straight from a job site, still in his work pants and a clean polo shirt, his $120 Red Wing boots, feeling clumsy and out of place on the polished floor. In his hand, he carried the clipboard with the final discharge and financial responsibility forms. The hospital required the guarantor's signature in person upon discharge, a final acknowledgement of the financial contract. Tiana and Yvonne were holding court. 2 young nurses were in the room, laughing at an anecdote Yvonne was telling. His mother-in-law, propped against a mountain of plush pillows, looked more like she was on a luxury vacation than recovering from major surgery. Her makeup was done, her silver hair was immaculate. Tiana was glowing, basking in her mother's restored vitality. Marcus pushed the door open. The happy chatter paused for a beat as 4 pairs of eyes turned to him. The nurses offered polite, professional smiles. Yvonne's face tightened almost imperceptibly. Tiana's expression was blank, as if he were a room service attendant she hadn't summoned. He cleared his throat. "Hi. They asked me to bring these up for a final signature." He held up the clipboard. One of the nurses, a kind-faced young woman with her hair in neat cornrows, stepped forward. "Oh, perfect. We're just finishing up Mrs. Morris's final vitals check before the discharge process begins. It's so wonderful to see her doing so well. You have such a lovely family." It was this innocent, well-intentioned comment that served as the trigger. Yvonne let out a soft, tinkling laugh, a sound that Marcus had once found charming, but now recognized as condescending. She waved a dismissive hand, her rings catching the light. "Tiana is a darling, yes?" she said, her voice carrying clearly through the quiet room. She then tilted her head towards Marcus, who was standing not 10 feet away. She didn't lower her voice. She didn't try to be discreet. She looked directly at the nurse and delivered the line that would shatter his world. "Him?" she said, a small, cruel smile playing on her lips. "Oh, he's nobody. He's just the man who pays the bills." The silence that followed was deafening. It was a vacuum that sucked all the warmth and air out of the room. The nurse who had spoken blushed a deep, mortified red. The other nurse suddenly found the IV drip fascinating. Tiana, his wife, the woman who had begged him, cried to him, and manipulated him into taking on a mountain of debt for the woman in that bed, simply stared at her own perfectly manicured nails. She didn't protest. She didn't correct. She didn't even flinch. Her silence was a resounding endorsement of her mother's words, nobody. The words slammed into Marcus with the force of a physical impact. It wasn't just an insult, it was an erasure. It negated his sacrifice, his love, his very identity within the family he had tried so hard to be a part of. He was not a husband, not a son-in-law, not a partner. He was a function, a wallet, an inanimate object that produced money. His gaze dropped to the clipboard in his hands. The black and white of the form was stark, clinical. Patient, Yvonne Morris guarantor, Marcus Hill relationship to patient. Son-in-law financial responsibility, 100%. He ran his thumb over his own name. Marcus Hill. He was somebody. He had a name. He had a job. He had a life. He had just signed away 5 years of that life for the woman who had just publicly declared him a non-entity. A cold, calm clarity washed over him, extinguishing the hot flash of shame and anger. It was the same methodical focus he felt when diagnosing a complex HVAC system. He analyzed the components, identified the faulty part, and understood what needed to be done. The faulty part was his belief in this family. The solution was to disconnect himself from the system. He looked up one last time. He saw Yvonne, smug and self-satisfied. He saw Tiana, cowardly and complicit. They hadn't noticed the change in him. They were already moving on, Yvonne launching into another story, eager to recapture her audience. They had dismissed him so completely that they didn't even register his presence anymore. So he made himself absent. Without a word, without a sound, he turned around. He walked out of the multi-thousand-dollar-a-day hospital suite. In the hallway, he placed the clipboard on an empty chair next to a decorative ficus tree. He walked past the nurse's station, ignoring the curious glances. He got into the elevator, descended through the floors of the glass tower, and walked out into the gray, drizzly Philadelphia afternoon. The cool rain that was beginning to fall on his face felt like a baptism. It was washing something away. He got into his old Ford F-150, the familiar scent of worn fabric and coffee a comforting balm. He turned the key, and the engine rumbled to life. He did not look back. His phone buzzed in his pocket as he drove. A text from Tiana. 6:47 p.m. "Where did you go? Mama wants a latte from the good place downstairs." He ignored it. Another buzz. 7:15 p.m. "Seriously, Marcus, where are you? The discharge nurse is looking for you." He kept driving, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He drove through the bustling streets of West Philly, past the vibrant murals and the lively storefronts, his mind a quiet, cold space. He was not playing dumb. He was playing sane. He was refusing to participate in the madness any longer. The frantic energy of the hospital, the cloying sweetness of Yvonne's perfume, the sting of her words, it all began to fade, replaced by a grim, methodical resolve. He was not angry anymore. Anger was a hot, messy emotion. What he felt was cold, hard, and clear, like a block of ice forming around his heart. It was the feeling of a decision locking into place. He arrived at their row home on a quiet street in South Philly. The house he had worked so hard on, the home he had tried to build, felt alien. He walked through the front door and was hit by the scent of Tiana's expensive $80 diptyque candle. It smelled of tuberose and hypocrisy. He walked into the kitchen and saw the takeout containers from the $95 Thai meal still in the recycling bin. A receipt for her $650 car payment was stuck to the fridge with a novelty magnet. He sat down at their small 4-person dining table, a sturdy $400 piece from Crate and Barrel that he had assembled himself. He didn't turn on the lights. He just sat in the gathering dusk, the gray light from the window painting long shadows on the wall. He turned his phone off. The silence was a relief, a weapon. His non-responsiveness was his first and only act of defiance. He wasn't hiding, he was refusing. He was no longer available for their commands, their insults, their needs. He thought about the lies. Not just the big soul-crushing lie that he was nobody, but the hundreds of smaller ones that had propped it up. The lie that his work was dirty, but his money was clean. The lie that Tiana's inheritance was more sacred than his financial future. The lie that their marriage was a partnership. He had been so busy playing the part of the good husband, the supportive son-in-law, that he had failed to see he was the only one reading from that script. Everyone else was in a different play, a tragedy where he was cast as the fool. He stayed up all night. He didn't drink. He didn't rage. He gathered documents. He went down to the small, damp basement where he kept his files. He pulled out the folder for the house, the one with the mortgage documents. He found the loan agreement from the bank, its pages crisp and damning. He printed out the bank statement showing the $84,500 wire transfer. He found the hospital's initial financial agreement he had signed weeks ago. He laid them all out on the dining table like a general planning a campaign. The facts were his army. The numbers were his artillery. At 3:30 a.m., he made a pot of coffee using his old, reliable $89 Mr. Coffee machine. As he drank it black and strong, he looked at the evidence of his own folly. But it no longer looked like folly. It looked like leverage. The very chains they had wrapped around him were now in his hands. He was the guarantor. He was the one with the legal standing. He was the one the hospital had a contract with. "He's nobody," Yvonne had said. He smiled grimly into his coffee cup. He was about to show them just how important nobody could be. For the first time in a long time, he was not thinking about what they wanted from him. He was thinking about what he wanted for himself. And what he wanted was justice, not revenge. That was their currency, a messy barter of cruelty and ego. He wanted a simple, clean, and total balancing of the scales. He wanted his name back. At 8:05 a.m. the next morning, Marcus turned his phone back on. It immediately exploded with a flurry of notifications. 17 missed calls from Tiana, 5 from the hospital's main line, a dozen frantic texts. "Marcus, this isn't funny. Call me now. The hospital is threatening to charge us for another day if we can't discharge Mama. Where are you? I swear to God, Marcus, if you are doing this to punish me, you will regret it." He read them all with a detached calm. The panic in her words gave him no pleasure, only confirmation. He had made the right move. Instead of calling her back, he made a different call. He had seen a billboard on his drive home for a law firm. "James and Associates, we fight for you." A quick search led him to Alana James, a highly rated attorney specializing in family law and financial disputes. She was a black woman, and her profile radiated a no-nonsense competence that appealed to him. He called her office. "Alana James's office. How may I help you?" a professional voice answered. "I'd like to schedule an emergency consultation," Marcus said. "It's regarding a hospital guarantor agreement and a potential marital separation." He secured a video consultation for 9:30 a.m. The fee was $350 for the hour, a price that would have made him flinch 2 days ago. Today, it felt like the best investment he had ever made. At exactly 9:30 a.m., he was looking at Alana James on his laptop screen. She was in her late 40s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and her hair in elegant twists. She listened patiently, without interruption, as Marcus laid out the entire story. He was factual and concise. He told her about his salary, Tiana's spending, the pressure campaign, the $62,500 loan, the $22,000 from his savings, and the final humiliating scene in the hospital room. He held up each document to the camera. The loan agreement, the bank transfer confirmation, the guarantor form. When he finished, Alana was silent for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "Mr. Hill," she said, her voice firm and clear, "let me be blunt. You have been financially and emotionally exploited. However, their arrogance has given you a significant amount of leverage." She leaned forward. "Let's be clear on the legal facts. You are the sole guarantor on that agreement. The hospital's contract for payment and services is with you, and you alone. You have already fulfilled the primary obligation by paying for the surgery itself. The discharge process, however, is a separate administrative event that requires your signature to release the hospital from liability and to confirm the care plan. Is that correct?" "Yes," Marcus said. "They need my signature on the final forms. Then you are in control," Alana stated. "Without that signature, Mrs. Morris is in a state of limbo. The hospital cannot formally discharge her. If she leaves, it's against medical advice, which creates a host of insurance and liability problems for her. If she stays, they will continue to bill for the room and services, and because you are still the guarantor of record, they will bill you." Marcus felt a jolt of alarm. "So I'm still on the hook?" "Temporarily," Alana corrected, "which is why we are going to be proactive. Your first step is to communicate to the hospital, in writing, that you are revoking your status as guarantor for any and all charges incurred after, let's say, 5 p.m. yesterday. You will state that your initial obligation has been met. This puts the onus back on them. They will not let a patient with an uncertain payment source remain in their most expensive wing. They will demand that your wife and mother-in-law provide a new guarantor immediately." She continued, "Your second step is to decide what you want. This is no longer just about the hospital. This is about the end of your marriage. I can begin drafting separation papers immediately. We will argue that the $84,500 payment, while from your assets and loan, was a specific debt incurred for the sole benefit of your wife's mother, and therefore should be treated as marital debt assigned to Tiana in the separation agreement, especially if she has undisclosed assets. She has a stock portfolio," Marcus said, the memory of her casual mention of it surfacing. "I don't know how much is in it." Alana's eyes lit up. "Excellent. We will file a motion for discovery of all financial assets. Mr. Hill, they made one critical mistake. They believed you were a passive source of income. They never imagined you would read the contract and understand your power. They thought you were nobody. We are about to prove, in a legally binding way, that you are everybody." For the first time in months, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. He wasn't just a victim anymore. He was a client. He had a strategy. He spent the rest of the hour with Alana, drafting an email to the hospital's billing department and the patient advocate. He forwarded her all his documents. By the time the consultation ended at 10:30 a.m., he had a clear plan of action. He was no longer just walking away. He was preparing to strike. What do you think Marcus should demand? Is he right to take this stand? Share your thoughts below. The first call came at 10:48 a.m., just minutes after he and Alana had sent the formal email to the hospital. It was from a blocked number. Marcus let it go to voicemail. The message, from a woman who identified herself as Sarah from the hospital's administrative office, was clipped and tense. "Mr. Hill, we have received your email. I believe there is a misunderstanding. Please call me back immediately to resolve this." He didn't call back. Alana had been clear. All communication must be in writing. The real offensive began an hour later. Tiana must have been notified. Call 1, 11:52 a.m. "Tiana." Marcus answered on the second ring, putting the phone on speaker. "Hello? Marcus, what did you do?" Her voice was a shriek of rage and disbelief. "They're trying to kick my mother out of the hospital. They said you revoked your guarantee. They're demanding I sign papers and provide a credit card for $50,000 as a deposit. Marcus remained silent, letting her frantic energy dissipate into the quiet of his house. "Are you listening to me?" she screamed. "My mother just had spinal surgery. You can't do this to her, to us, after everything you promised." "I promised to pay for the surgery, Tiana," Marcus said, his voice level and cold. "The bill is paid, $84,500. My promise is fulfilled." "This is about that stupid comment, isn't it?" she spat. "You're this fragile? You're going to destroy our family because my mother, who is on pain medication, made a little joke?" "It wasn't a joke, Tiana. It was the truth. It's how you both see me. I'm just the man who pays the bills. So, the bill is paid. My services are no longer required." He could hear her sputtering on the other end, a mixture of fury and dawning horror. "What do you want, Marcus? Is that it? You want money? Fine. We'll pay you back. Just fix this." "It's too late for that," he said calmly. "I don't want your money. I want you to listen very carefully. The hospital needs a new guarantor. That person is not me. My lawyer, Alana James, will be in touch with you regarding the terms of our legal separation." He heard a sharp intake of breath. "Separation? You're leaving me over this?" "No, Tiana," Marcus said, and the finality in his own voice surprised him. "I'm leaving you because of everything. This was just the moment I finally opened my eyes." He hung up the phone. Call 2. 1:20 p.m. A man identifying himself as Mr. Davies, the Director of Patient Financial Services. His tone was professional, but edged with steel. "Mr. Hill, I'm calling to strongly advise you to reconsider your position. You signed a binding contract." "And I fulfilled it," Marcus replied, repeating the line that was becoming his mantra. "The surgery was paid in full. Any services rendered after 5 p.m. yesterday are not my responsibility. I have formally notified you of this in writing." "It's not that simple," Davies pressed. "Discharge is part of the continuum of care. Your withdrawal creates a significant logistical and financial problem." "That sounds like a problem for the patient, Mrs. Morris, and her daughter, Tiana Hill," Marcus said, his voice devoid of emotion. "My lawyer has advised me that my legal position is secure. If you have further questions, you can direct them to her." He gave him Alana's name and number. "Mr. Hill," Davies said, his voice dropping, "this action is highly unusual and, frankly, unprofessional." Marcus almost laughed. "Unprofessional? I'm an HVAC technician. I'm not a professional husband. I'm just nobody, remember?" He hung up, the click of the phone echoing with finality. The rest of the afternoon was a cascade of frantic voicemails, Tiana crying now, Tiana pleading, then Tiana threatening. Then Yvonne herself left a message, her voice no longer silky and imperious, but raspy and weak with rage. "You ungrateful little man. After all we've done for you, letting you into this family, you will regret this." Marcus saved the voicemail. It was more evidence. The final decisive blow came late in the afternoon. Alana called him. "They blinked," she said, a note of triumph in her voice. "Tiana Hill called my office. She was hysterical. The hospital told her that if they cannot secure a new guarantor by 5 p.m., they will begin the process of transferring Mrs. Morris to a standard ward and will be placing a lien on her known assets, starting with her condominium, to cover all outstanding and future costs." Marcus felt a wave of relief. It was working. What did Tiana want? "She asked what it would take to get you to sign the papers. I told her I would consult with my client." Marcus took a deep breath. This was it, the moment to set his terms. It was never about the money. It was about dignity. "Here's what I want, Alana," he said, his voice steady and sure. First, a formal, notarized letter of apology from Yvonne Morris. It must be addressed to me and to the board of directors of the hospital. In it, she must acknowledge me by name as her son-in-law and state clearly that I was the sole and total funder of her $84,500 surgery, not a bill payer. The funder. He continued, second, Tiana must sign an agreement as part of our separation, assuming full responsibility for the $62,500 personal loan I took out. Her stock portfolio can be used as collateral. Third, she will not contest the sale of the house, and the equity will be split 50-50 after the mortgage is paid. Alana was quiet for a second. That's it? You're not asking for the $22,000 back from your savings? No, Marcus said. That's the price of my freedom. I'll consider it the stupidest, most valuable $22,000 I ever spent. It bought me this lesson. I just want out, with my name and my dignity intact. I will convey your terms, Alana said. I suspect you'll have an answer very soon. She was right. Within 2 hours, Tiana called her back. She agreed to everything. The desperation in her voice was the sound of a world of entitlement finally crashing into the hard wall of consequence. Marcus felt no joy, only a profound, weary sadness. He had won, and he had lost everything he once thought was real. The consequences cascaded with the swift, brutal efficiency of a financial collapse. Tiana and Yvonne, who had lived their lives cushioned by assumptions and other people's money, were now faced with the hard, sharp edges of reality. Consequence 1. The humiliating letter. Yvonne, trapped in her luxury hospital room that was now accruing charges at a rate of $4,800 per day, was forced to write the letter. Tiana brought it to a notary who made a hospital visit for a $150 fee. The letter, which Alana received via courier the next morning, was a masterpiece of reluctant apology. Every word felt like it had been extracted under duress. To whom it may concern, it began. I, Yvonne Morris, am writing to clarify the financial arrangements for my recent surgery. My son-in-law, Marcus Hill, was instrumental in this process. He was the sole funder for the procedure, providing the full amount of $84,500. My previous comments regarding his role were a mischaracterization made under the influence of post-operative stress and medication. I deeply regret any misunderstanding this has caused. It was cold, stilted, and utterly devoid of genuine remorse. But it met the letter of Marcus's demands. Alana faxed a copy to the hospital's legal department. Marcus's name was cleared. His role was, finally, on the record. Consequence 2. The financial scramble. The 2 extra days Yvonne spent in the hospital while they scrambled to meet Marcus's terms cost them $9,600. The hospital, now wary, demanded this amount up front before they would even accept Tiana as the new guarantor. Tiana, in a panic, was forced to liquidate shares from the secret Vanguard portfolio Marcus now knew about. She sold off $10,000 worth of Apple stock, shares she had been holding for years. The sale not only cost her the money, but also a significant future capital gain. Consequence 3. The loss of the status symbol. The humiliation didn't end there. To satisfy the hospital's requirement for a new guarantor, and to cover the ongoing costs of Yvonne's extensive post-operative care, which would no longer be funded by an endless line of credit from Marcus, Tiana had to make a drastic move. She had to sell her beloved white BMW 3 Series. The car was her identity, her armor in the world. A quick sale to a dealership only netted her $38,500 for a car, with a $43,000 market value. The loss of $4,500 was a bitter pill, but the loss of the car itself was a crushing blow to her ego. A week later, a former colleague saw her waiting for a bus on Market Street and texted a friend about it. The news spread through her social circle like wildfire. Consequence 4. The legal separation. The separation agreement was swift and brutal. With the notarized letter and the evidence of the secret stock portfolio, Tiana had no leverage. Alana James drafted an agreement that assigned the full $62,500 loan debt to Tiana. The house was put on the market immediately. It sold in 3 weeks for $195,000 in the hot Philly market. After paying off the remaining $105,000 mortgage, the $90,000 in equity was split down the middle. Marcus walked away with $45,000 in cash, his half of their shared life. Tiana was left with her own $45,000, which was immediately swallowed by legal fees and the initial payments on the loan she now shouldered alone. Consequence 5. The new domestic reality. With no car and her finances in tatters, Tiana was forced to move out of the sold row home and into her mother's condo. The spacious, elegant apartment in Center City no longer felt like a palace. It felt like a prison. She became her mother's full-time caregiver, not out of love, but out of necessity. Yvonne, bitter and resentful, was not an easy patient. Their relationship, once built on mutual admiration and scheming, curdled into one of recrimination and dependence. The beautiful condo, once a symbol of their superiority, now had a lien placed on it by a medical collections agency for a disputed physical therapy bill amounting to $7,800, a bill Tiana had failed to manage properly in the chaos. Marcus heard about all of this in piecemeal fashion through a mutual acquaintance. He felt no pleasure, no schadenfreude. He just felt a profound sense of closure. Their world had been built on a foundation of his silent sacrifice. When he removed that foundation, the entire structure had collapsed, as it was always destined to. He, meanwhile, was busy gathering new materials, preparing to build something real. 1 year later. The sun was warm on Marcus's back. It was a bright Saturday morning in May, and he was standing on the newly built front porch of a duplex in Brewery Town, a neighborhood humming with renewal. He held a Makita cordless drill in his hand, a comfortable and familiar weight. Sawdust clung to his jeans and the sleeves of his gray t-shirt. He had bought the property 6 months ago for $275,000, using his $45,000 from the house sale and a new mortgage that felt entirely his own. The place had been a wreck, but it had good bones. He had spent every weekend and most evenings since the purchase bringing it back to life. He'd done all the demolition himself, hung new drywall, and taught himself plumbing from YouTube videos. His old HVAC skills had made installing 2 new high-efficiency systems a breeze. His collection of tools, once a source of their condescension, had become the instruments of his liberation. He now lived in the first-floor 2-bedroom unit. The second-floor unit, which he had just finished renovating, was already rented out. A young couple, a graphic designer and a chef, had moved in last week. Their rent check of $1,600 a month covered his entire mortgage payment, plus $200. His $61,000 salary from his HVAC job, which he had started to love again, was now entirely his. He was saving more money than he ever had, even when he was part of a dual-income household. He was building equity. He was building a future. He took a sip of his coffee, looking out at the tree-lined street. A few weeks ago, he had met a woman named Chloe at a local coffee shop. She was a middle school science teacher with a quick smile and an easy laugh. When he told her what he did for a living, she had been genuinely interested. "That's amazing," she'd said. "You understand how things work. You can fix things. That's a real skill." Last weekend, she had come over and helped him paint the trim on the porch, her hands getting splattered with white paint, her laughter echoing in the afternoon air. It felt simple. It felt real. He thought back to that moment in the hospital, the word nobody, that had once echoed like a death knell in his soul. He realized now that it hadn't been an ending. It had been a beginning. Being nobody to them had freed him to become somebody to himself. He had spent years trying to earn his worth in their eyes, trying to buy his value with his labor and his money. He saw now that true worth isn't something that can be granted by others. It's something you build board by board, pipe by pipe, within yourself. His wealth wasn't the number in his bank account. It was the calluses on his hands, the peace in his quiet home, the satisfaction of standing on a porch that he had built himself. The world tells you that your value is tied to what you can provide for others, that your love is measured by the size of your sacrifice. But sometimes the greatest act of love is the one you show to yourself. It's the act of walking away from those who would diminish you, of refusing to be a footnote in someone else's story. It's about picking up your own tools and building your own foundation, one that no one can ever take away from you. Because when you build your life on the bedrock of self-respect, you create a home that can withstand any storm. Have you ever had to walk away to find your own worth? Share your story of rebuilding in the comments below. Let's lift each other up.